I think the thing that took the longest with the digital nomad visa was not getting my FBI background check, but getting the FBI background check apostilled.
So I've got Amelia here, who is a very, very old family friend. I've known her since she was maybe that tall, maybe less, basically since she was born. Now she is living over in Madrid, been here for a couple months, got that new digital nomad visa that a lot of people are asking all about. So I wanted to sit down as part of the expat corner and see how things were going, how everything was going with the nomad visa. Can you give them a little bit of a background about yourself, just generally kind of what you're doing over here, how long you've been here?
Yeah, so I am a user experience designer. I work in technology. I have been doing freelance since 2020. So that means I work contracted to a couple different companies. I've got a lot of flexibility. Also means I can do the digital nomad visa. But the companies that I work for are in the US. They're on the East Coast. So one of the conditions with them was that I continue to work US hours. And so in October of 2022, last year, I did a 3-month test run in Barcelona. And then I came back in April to get the digital nomad visa, and I ended up in Madrid. So that's where I've been since April 2023, this year.
So we had a little bit of a 3-month test run in Barcelona, and then we decided to head over to Madrid.
Yes, I love both Barcelona and Madrid. I had done a trip a long time ago, and I remembered always liking Madrid. So technically, I'm still deciding. I think I'm leaning towards Madrid. But I wanted to kind of give Madrid the same test run that I did Barcelona and see kind of at the end of the 3 months which one I thought was going to be my forever home.
All right, so we'll get to that in maybe a little bit about the kind of differences between Barcelona, Madrid, and everything. Might be interesting for people that are looking to move over here as well. But in terms of Spain as a whole, all right, what was the decision like? Can you talk us through a little bit about the decision-making process?
Yeah, so in 2016, I was still in college at the time, and I did a study abroad trip in Germany. And after that, I'd planned to go to Spain. I knew that you were living here at the time, and a friend was supposed to meet me in Barcelona, and from there we were going to do a trip around Spain. She actually ended up not coming.
I completely forgot about that. Yeah, there's supposed to be another person there that year.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
I actually had a call with you in Germany, and you were like, hey, what are your plans for Spain? And I said, I don't know. I haven't heard from my friend. And you were like, okay, well, here are the cities you should go to, and here's what you should do in each of the cities, and basically just like planned the whole trip for me. And I was like, this is great. I love Spain.
My first step into the travel agency world and everything right there. I completely forgot that you had that friend that was supposed to come.
Yeah. So I was staying with you in Barcelona, and I set off from there to San Sebastian, Bilbao, Madrid, Sevilla, Granada, Cordoba, back to Barcelona. And every city that I went to, I was like, this is great. I could live here. This is great. I could live here. And yeah, I knew you were an American living in Spain, so I knew it was possible. And from there, I got home. I told my parents, I said, when I graduate, I'm moving to Spain. And they said, yeah, okay, sure. That's what everyone says when they come back from a trip abroad. And I kept saying it for the next 6 years.
It was quite a long time. I mean, we had talked back and forth a lot about when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, just possibilities of even being able to do it. Yeah. So what was the final kind of, decision of I'm getting over there?
Yeah, so it was actually because the digital nomad visa came out. So I looked into doing grad school. I looked into trying to get a job in Spain. But grad school wasn't like, I'm going to live here forever. And so grad school wasn't a long-term option. Getting a job as an expat, getting a job in Spain is pretty difficult. and you told me about the digital nomad visa. I started looking into it. And actually the push was, my lease was up in October of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to raise my rent by like a ridiculous amount of money. And I didn't want to move to another place in the city I was living in because that was another year lease. It was another year I wasn't going to go to Spain. And so I kind of just said, hey, now's a better time than ever. And I was on the phone with my mom, booked my flight without any other plans. No plans of how I was getting my dog over here. No plans of where I was living, what I was going to be doing, how long I was. I think I maybe booked a return ticket, but I'm not entirely sure.
I think you had a return ticket. I remember you texting me, just being like, hey, I'm coming in, was it end of October, beginning of November? You're like, I'm going to be here. Where should I go? Where should I live? What should I do? And then you were here. Yeah, it was a 3-month little trial. And how was that for you? How did you see that? And kind of, did that reinforce your decision to come over here?
Yeah, so, there's one thing on paper saying, I'm going to work from 3 in the afternoon until 11 o'clock at night. And then there's another thing actually doing it. I also didn't know if there were going to be any issues about, like, that I didn't even think of, like internet access or, stuff like that. And I ended up realizing it could work. I am a little bit more flexible with my hours now, so it's not strictly 3 to 11, but I still find that the work-life, even though I'm like working in a larger period, I take a lot more breaks. So I think there's a really good work-life balance here, that I'm not, even though I'm maybe working over the course of 12 hours, I'm not working all 12 hours straight.
Yeah, so I've kind of got 2 questions now, so I'll kind of try to divide them separately so you can answer each of them, fully. But what you just hit on with work-life balance, in you've only been here for a couple months now still, but in that time, how have you seen that difference in the work-life balance over here in Spain? Not only just general, but also in general, but also thinking about realistically working those hours in the States and balancing that with life over here. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I would say there's a big culture shift in the way that Spaniards approach work and the way Americans approach work. So I think, at least when I was in the U.S., I tied a lot of my identity up in what I was doing for work. That was kind of the first question I'd ask people. That's the first thing I'd say about myself. Whereas here, it's more like I work to pay my bills. I still enjoy what I do. I still really like my job, but it's not the most interesting thing about me. And to answer your second question about, working U.S. hours while here, I find that I'm not necessarily answering every single request as soon as it comes in, which I think ultimately is better because sometimes, if you wait an hour, they answer their own question and you don't have to do any work. Here people take a really long lunch break. So there's more of a culture of being able to kind of pause in work. And I think that actually really helps my efficiency as well. It helps with burnout. So I'm not just, forcing myself to sit at a desk, and then, I'm staring at a screen for 45 minutes and getting 20 minutes of work done.
Right.
I might be reading a book for 15 minutes, and that's enough of a break to then get, 40 minutes of really good quality work done.
Okay. So obviously working at a different kind of hourly, I guess, time frame, right? We're talking about, you were back in East Coast time before. And so a lot of your clients, a lot of the people that you're working with are about 6 hours behind you. Do you find that difficult?
I think it depends. So it's really hard to turn my phone off at night, and I stay up a little bit later to be able to kind of have that time to decompress from work. But a lot of the people I work with are morning people, so I can message them at 8:50 with, "Hey, I just did all of this heads down work for 3 hours while you're sleeping. Can you review it?" They might get back to me at 3, 4 p.m. their time, 9, 10 o'clock here.
Right.
And then I will, get to it the next day. They also all know that I'm here in Spain, so I don't think if they're messaging me at, 4:30 their time for an impromptu meeting, they know that I'm probably not going to answer that. And so things are a little bit more scheduled, a little more pre-mediated.
Okay, and with that 3-month period that you were mentioning before, you're kind of testing some things out. Were you able to see that right away as kind of one of the ways that you could work? And is that something that you would recommend anybody that wants to move over here to do? Test it out first. That's a lot of times I hear that as a suggestion. Go over, test it out. Not only the place to see how the life is, how maybe even just noise in the apartment or anything that you're thinking about, or different zones of the city. But how did you really take advantage of those 3 months, and what did you learn?
Yeah, I mean, I work in the kind of like research and development part of technology. So I'm all for doing trial runs, testing things before you commit to it. I mean, it's also a decent chunk of change to move your entire life to a different continent. So I found in those 3 months, I kind of tried a couple different approaches. I tried strictly working from 3 to 11 and not working in the mornings. I also tried, kind of doing some heads down work in the mornings, doing some meetings in the afternoons. And I would say now there's not really one set schedule for me. So sometimes I am working, 3 to 11 at night. Sometimes I am working mornings and afternoons. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't come over here. Mm-hmm. And I think I would have been a lot more nervous having moved my entire life. The first couple of weeks when I was in Barcelona doing that trial run were really difficult. And I was really scared that I wasn't going to be able to work this schedule forever. But after kind of 3-4 weeks, I was like, oh, this is actually doable. I can accommodate some things, gives me time to cook during the day, which I didn't have before. So I'm not just eating sandwiches for lunch, I'm eating like a nice meal. I also learned that I needed to get a VPN. One of my clients, so I work for a company, they know I'm in Spain, but their clients don't necessarily know I'm in Spain. Mm-hmm. And some of them have stricter security departments than others. And one of them, their IT department picked up that I was in Spain and said, hey, is this, are we getting hacked? Or, is one of your contractors in Barcelona? And it was like, wow. Oh, yeah, I am. Time to invest in a VPN to make sure.
Wow, I didn't even think about that, right? They can tell where you're working. Mm-hmm. And obviously, with the digital nomad, one of the things that you need is that permission from those contracted clients, or even just from the company. But maybe a VPN would help with some people if they haven't looked into one already, not only for security purposes, but also just kind of where you can be. And then obviously the big bonus is Netflix, right? You can watch some of those American shows. Yeah.
Also, being able to kind of access government sites, that proved to be really difficult. I actually called my mom to try and have her access the DMV when I was in Barcelona, because I didn't have the VPN yet, and government websites tend to say like, you're outside of the US, why do you need to be accessing the US DMV system, right? They kind of flag that. So having that VPN to say, actually, I'm in, Washington, D.C., the DMV was none the wiser.
Okay, that's interesting. Something we need to probably think about a little bit more, right? If we're going to be making that move over to Spain, just in general. What about kind of, now that you've been here for a couple months and everything, outside of working hours that we've already hit on, just kind of some things adjusting to the day-to-day life in Spain? Is there anything that you noticed specifically in terms of the culture, language? That's what a lot of people always have a question about specifically. How's the language? How was your level coming over? And how do you feel just kind of going around the city day to day?
So I knew for a while that I wanted to move to Spain. So I had been practicing my Spanish. I didn't really take a lot of formal classes. I took high school Spanish, but what really helped was watching a lot of TV shows that'll help you kind of get the colloquial language and phrases and things.
Any specific TV shows you'd recommend?
I have a movie that I would recommend, which is called Tenemos que Hablar. It's a romantic comedy, and it's really funny. I'd also recommend, if you want to learn a little bit more about the culture as well, Ochos Apellidos Vascos.
Great movie. Great movie.
8 Basque last names.
Exactly.
I think there's also a follow-up called Ochos Apellidos Catalanes.
Not as good.
Yeah, I think the original's better.
Not as good. The first one was a really good one, quality,
Yes.
but that second one hit a little bit closer to home. I liked. I thought it was, I got some of the jokes a little bit more than maybe some of the Basque stuff, but yeah. Just stick with the first one for sure.
Yeah, pokes a little bit of fun at Spanish stereotypes.
No, it's all good, nice laugh, but I think the first one was definitely better.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you did some classes, you were watching some films, anything else that you did in prep?
Tried to make friends that spoke the language. I will say my Spanish is far from perfect. There are a lot of words I don't know. There are a lot of phrases that I understand literally what they mean. So someone in the dog park actually the other week was saying their dog was, rolling around in the dirt, and she was saying, "Oh, look, he's making croquetas," which is this Spanish dish of these little, fried balls that are rolled in breadcrumbs. And I was like, that dog's not making croquetas. What are you talking about? And she's like, yeah, he's rolling around in the dirt like you roll a croqueta in breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
So
like we would call like a pencil roll, a log roll, something like that.
Yeah. And so I understand literally what she meant, but I didn't understand the nuance behind it.
Exactly.
That still happens to me all the time. There's words that people use that I don't know. Spanish people are very kind with that. You just say, hey, sorry, I didn't understand that word. And if they don't know English, they'll explain it in Spanish. Usually you can get that from the context or get, what they're saying. If they do know English, they can say the word in English, and they just kind of continue on with the conversation.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I've said it quite a few times and everything, but when you come and you don't maybe know the language as well, one of the things that Spanish people do in general, if they can, is they always switch over to English. So a lot of people have this problem, maybe wanting to practice and not being able to, because at the same time you want to practice, the people here want to practice their English as well. But they are, it is a way of helping. It's not a way of, dissing your level or anything. It's one thing that they do really try to help. What about kind of meeting people, different kind of things of going out, finding groups and everything like that? How have you dealt with that so far?
Yeah, so Meetup is a really great resource. If you've never heard of it, it's an app that a bunch of different organizations will publish events that are happening. They're usually free. Sometimes you pay, but the ones that I go to are usually like language exchanges. There's ExPat ones if you want to meet international people. There's a lot of board game ones usually. And so you kind of just find what you're interested in. You attend the meetup. They're usually weekly. Spanish people tend to treat their weekdays more like weekends as well. So, they may go out on Tuesday to grab a drink.
Go out any day.
Yeah. It's not the same as the U.S. where it's like living for the weekend. So I've met a lot of people through that. Also, the first couple ones that you go to are a little scary because you don't know anyone. You kind of have to get out of your comfort zone. But in both Barcelona and in Madrid, going to meetups, you meet people. They say, hey, are you part of this WhatsApp group? WhatsApp is a communication platform that's really popular here. You say no, you get added, and then there's kind of smaller groups where you're meeting more of the same people, rather than these big meetups are probably 90 people to 100, might be different people every week. But then once you join a WhatsApp group, it's a little bit smaller of a community.
Start to break it down a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, and you said the golden word right there. You said Barcelona, Madrid, and I remember when you first did your little trial run over in Barcelona, you were telling me it was a little bit more difficult than you thought to meet people before finding, you know, kind of those different groups and everything like that. Can you talk a little bit about those differences that you've seen already between meeting people in Barcelona versus meeting people in Madrid?
So, one distinction I want to make, it's difficult to meet Spanish people or Catalan people in Barcelona.
Okay. Big difference here, right?
Yeah. So, I definitely met a bunch of people in Barcelona, really great people. I think I met maybe 2 people from the region or from Spain in the entire 3 months that I was there. So it was just a little bit more difficult. I think people who are from the area tend to stay in Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing happens in Madrid, but Madrid is the capital city, so a lot of people from other parts of Spain come
Exactly.
for work, for studies. And so because their family's not there, they don't have, you know, their childhood friends, they're a little bit more open to meeting people from kind of all walks of life.
For sure.
So I've met a lot of Spanish people here, but that's also, I think, from what I've heard, I've also met some Americans, and they've said that if you come to Madrid not knowing any Spanish, it is still difficult to meet Spanish people. I mean, the same thing is true in Barcelona. I think there are some Spanish people who just, you know, want to have friends in Spanish. Mm-hmm. Same thing with English speakers who want to have friends in English. So, you know, from that perspective, it might be the same if you go to Barcelona or Madrid. If you don't speak Spanish, you're going to meet a lot of expats. And there's wonderful expat groups in both cities. But I think if you want to meet Spanish people and you know Spanish, I think that's a little bit easier to do in Madrid.
Yeah, and just in general, you know, Barcelona is much more of the international city, kind of always has been, connected a little bit better to Europe as well. So you do find a lot more maybe expats, might be easier to meet some more expats or people from other places. And Madrid does tend to be a little bit more of Spanish cities, other people from Spanish cities coming over here. And it's kind of the whole idea of everybody's from Madrid, but nobody's from Madrid. Right? And you still have that common background of being from Spain, and then in Barcelona, you can find it, definitely can, but you do get a lot more of that kind of international flair. And I just remember that was one of the things that we talked about a lot, especially when you were trying things out and seeing how it was, that I think people should know, right? Because it's one of the things that when you're moving over, kind of what city you want to take into account, or what city you're looking to move to, right? Can you talk a little bit about, in your prep to moving over, what was your kind of like criteria moving to Barcelona, moving to Madrid? Did you look at other cities as well?
So I did take that trip in 2016. I kind of visited a bunch of different places.
The one that I planned, right?
Yes, the one
that one.
It's a famous Patrick tour guide Barcelona trip. So I did get to see a lot of different cities when I was in Spain, and I loved them all, but I really wanted to move to a bigger city. So you know, there's great public transportation in big cities. You do have a little bit more of that expat community.
Of course.
And I wanted to be able to meet locals as well and kind of immerse myself a bit into the culture, but still be able to kind of step back when I was feeling maybe a little homesick. And then, yeah, just well-connected, being able to travel to other places. So I was really looking at big cities, and I think 2 of the biggest cities are going to be Barcelona or Madrid.
Oh, by far the two largest for sure, and best connected.
So that kind of really narrowed down that list. And then it was just kind of making the decision points between Madrid and Barcelona.
Yeah, and like you said, you know, always a good trial period before, something that you definitely recommend. And then you can see the differences, kind of similar to what I did. Came over and wanted to check out both Barcelona and Madrid. Honestly, didn't even get over to Madrid, but did see what I liked in Barcelona. And, you know, from what we can say, it's been a little bit of a success, right? Since I've been there. So moving away a little bit from this whole idea of how you're finding cultural life and everything like that, can you talk a little bit more about the process for getting the Nomad Visa? This is something that's new, just came out this year, and so you're actually one of the first people to get accepted, which is pretty exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of things do you think people need to know before applying for that digital nomad visa?
Yeah. So I think the thing that took the longest with the digital nomad visa was not getting my FBI background check, but getting the FBI background check apostilled. You have to do it through the federal government. At the time that I was doing it, the federal government was still shut down because of COVID, so you couldn't go in person. There was no other option besides mailing it in, and they were saying, hey, it's going to take 8 weeks to get it apostilled. Everything else I was able to get rather quickly, the translations, the documents that I needed, and getting state level apostilles was pretty quick. But that I think was the biggest thing that I kind of had to wait on. And so I was reaching the end of my tourist visa after my trip from to Barcelona doing that trial run. So I went back to the United States and just waited on getting all of my documents together before I came back to apply from Spain. And that's another thing I'll say is so what I was told was if you're able to do a longer visa and it's less complicated to renew if you apply from Spain rather than applying from the U.S. consulate in the United States.
Okay, that's interesting. Better luck at getting a longer visa if you're already in Spain.
Yes.
But then the big thing is getting that FBI background check.
Yes.
Beforehand, and that obviously takes some time. And we've talked about it. If you're watching on YouTube and you've seen some of the other videos, did a video all about what you actually need to get the digital nomad visa from the Barcleona group, which is a Barcelona-based law firm. It talks you basically through the entire process. This is a visa that has just opened up to make sure that people that have either permission from their companies or are freelance workers can now, from outside of the EU, can now work in Spain, something that wasn't offered before. But obviously, like I talk about with kind of anything in terms of Spanish bureaucracy, and I think you've had your fair share already in the last couple months here, it's much more worth it to pay somebody to do it, to kind of have all those steps basically just like given to you or taken care of almost, so you can have it done. But the FBI background check is one of those things that we need to have done before, and getting that done from Spain is probably a little bit more difficult. You did it from home, right? You were back at this point already.
So you can do it from Spain. I actually got my fingerprints taken in Barcelona at a police station.
Okay.
Mailed the form to the FBI from Spain. Had no problems with that. They turned it around in I think like a week. But then at that point I was already back in the United States and mailed the form to get it apostilled, which basically just means like proof of legitimacy, because the Spanish government doesn't know if this is a real document or not.
Exactly.
And that was what took the longest process, especially because I didn't know that was part of it, right? So trying to figure out, how do I do this? I went through a company that I think I paid like $80, and they took care of everything. They made sure that I had everything, and they shipped it, and were able to, I think, maybe get it through a little faster. So it took something like 6 weeks rather than full 8. But still, that's a long time that was the longest by far that I was waiting on any document.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously that's going to be the most difficult of them, but there are quite a few different things that you need to get put together just to be able to present those papers. Is there anything else that you think people need to know before going into it? There's obviously, with that last video, got a lot of questions about specific things, but outside of the FBI background check, is there anything else that you think that people should know before applying?
Yeah, I think better safe than sorry. So if you're thinking, oh, I might need to get this apostille at a state level, so things like proof of existence for companies if you're doing freelance, your degree if you end up needing that. It's a little bit different, the requirements, whether you're freelance or a remote worker. But if there's anything that you're not sure about getting apostilled, it's easier to just do it anyway than to say, oh, well, maybe I'll apply without it. And then, you know,
have to go back another time or just not even have it. And then you get denied because you wanted to cut some corners or something. Definitely. And like I said, you know, maybe in our conversation right now, we're not going to go into exactly everything you need. If anybody's interested, you can check out that video I did with the Barcelona group that goes through each of those processes for both workers and for freelance workers as well. But overall, how difficult would you say that it was?
I would say once I got the documents I needed, I did work with a law firm. They sent it off, and exactly 20 days later, 20 working days later, I got the response, and they said, you're approved. The form had the NIE on it, which is the identification number for non-residents, which from other people that I've talked to, other people from outside of Spain that have visas, that takes forever to get. People have been waiting 2-3 years to try and get NIEs when they don't have the digital nomad visa. So I would say that's a huge advantage to already have that.
Right, and like we said, it's a new visa this year. Other options that people have had in the past of things that might have taken a little bit longer or a little bit more difficult to get, right? Which is one of the reasons that Spain opened up this new nomad visa that maybe other countries like Portugal or things that have been pretty easy to get into. So I think there's going to be a lot of interest. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are trying to come over here. Obviously, we talked about, you know, the work-life balance, different things that allow you to be working here in Spain from somewhere else. You need to have at least 80% of your income coming from basically outside of Spain. But realistically, we might see a lot of people coming over. How long, now that you have it, right, congratulations again. Now that you have it, how long are you allowed to reside in Spain?
So the visa that I have 3 years, and then at the end of that period, I can apply to extend it. I believe it's either I have to apply for 1 year and do that twice, or I can just apply once for another 2 years. And then at that point, I believe I'm eligible for Spanish residency, so I can stay in the country for hopefully forever.
All right. So then I guess that's my next question. What are your plans in terms of just life in Spain and the visa?
Yeah. So my plan is kind of to just stay here forever and live my life. I don't know how long I'll stay with a U.S. company. I mean, obviously it's not ideal to not kind of have your typical 9 to 5. Someone wants to do something at 6 or 7 o'clock, that's a little bit difficult because that's the middle of my workday. But I think I can get around it for, you know, it's just one trade-off for kind of living a dream that I've had for a long time. I might end up with a European company. So one of the advantages to the digital nomad visa is I could have a job from Germany or from the UK, and that would still allow me to retain the digital nomad visa. That might be something that I look into in the future. But yeah, the plan is to kind of be here forever and build my life, and yeah.
Very cool. And I know it's only been a couple months, right? It's still very fresh. It's still very new. So what I'd love to do is, you know, maybe in about a year or so, kind of check back in and see how you're doing, kind of what you've been finding with everything, just in general and everything. We can kind of do a little bit of a catch-up for everybody so that you guys can know as well how Amelia is doing over here in Madrid. Before we get out of here, anything that you want to leave those that are looking to get the digital nomad visa with for a little bit of advice?
I guess as much as it's scary, it's definitely worth it. And if you're even just thinking about it, I would say go ahead and start the process because you never know where you're going to end up.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much for sitting down with me. I know if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it's maybe not the best weather today, clearing up a little bit more right now. So this is maybe not typical of Madrid weather that you've been seeing. But thank you for joining me here on the Expat Corner and giving us a little bit of insight to the Nomad Visa in your life.